Welcome everybody to Flow Hyderabad's second episode of Game Changers, in which we will hear from two amazing ladies, their unique stories of personal conviction and self-empowerment. Chairperson Usha Rani Manne will make us travel companions with her as she takes us through their true north journeys. A gentle reminder to all of you in the Zoom room to please turn off your video and mute your audio feed for a better viewer experience. Do leave your questions for either of our speakers in the chat box. We will be taking them up, as always, in the Q&A segment. I will now quickly request Usha to light the ceremonial lamp and take the afternoon forward from there.
Namaste. It's with immense pleasure that I welcome our guest speakers, past chains, Monica Agarwal and Rekha Lahoti. Thank you both for joining us here this afternoon. A warm welcome to our past chains, fellow chairpersons, friends at Flow and viewers, to the second installment in our series of motivational talks, Game Changers. In this series, we will hear from each of our wonderful past chairpersons, their story in their words. The theme we choose for today, True North, refer to our inner sense or our calling of what we want to accomplish in our life. It's a combination of our values, our beliefs, and our purpose. It keeps us on a straight track that's true for us. And it's different for every single person. There's no two people for whom True North is the same. Most of us here are leaders of companies, businesses, other organizations. Leadership is how we interface with the world around us. There are external forces driving us and pressures on us to achieve goals and objectives. There are times when we get caught up in those pressures and go off course. In times like those, it is this moral compass built into our personalities that helps us stay on track, pulling us back to where we belong from where we have strayed. Over the next couple of hours, we will try to unravel the true north of our illustrious speakers today. Before we begin, I would like to quickly apprise you of what you can look forward to in the coming month. We have an exciting lineup of events for you, starting with a roundtable conversation with none less than Union Minister Sri Gajendra Singh Shekhawat on India's water policy, followed by a biz talk on unconventional methods to grow conventional businesses. Ladies, I'm very excited to announce our first ground event on November 23rd. Attendance will be strictly limited to 100 in deference to the precautionary guidelines, and so this event will be by registration only. We have a very powerful orator with us, speaking on a topic that has never gone out of currency. And I urge you to send in your registration as soon as the invitation reaches you. On our part, we promise to adhere to the strictest safety protocols. On 27th, Rahul Shivashankar, Editor-in-Chief of Times Now, will discuss with us on another mood subject, meritocracy in India. Planning for the annual retreat is underway, which is proposed for the last week of January. Given the current situation, the 3 nights, 4 days tour to a highly acclaimed wellness resort is open to the first 25 registrants only. So please be alert and book your place as soon as the invite is in your mailbox. In FFC, Flow Mentorship Cell, the participating mentors and mentees have been mapped internally and the process of mapping them across India is ongoing. Flo signed an MOU with Virginia Tech University for a certified mentorship development program. Do take advantage of these opportunities being created for you. This December, we have a 4-part learning series mapped out over 4 consecutive Tuesdays to equip you with a complete beginner's toolkit on social media. And now, back to where we started. The attempt to decode the true north of our past tense. My interaction with Monica began strictly in the context of Flo and our respective professions. But over time, it has blossomed into a deep friendship based on mutual trust and respect. Our telephonic exchanges have at times stretched over hours without moving into anything personal. During her tenure as chairperson, I served the organization in the capacity of treasurer. Her very strong background in finance and management helped me acquire an overall picture of the commercial aspects and do's and don'ts with regard to Flo. I noticed then the unique blend of quiet discipline and aggressive achievement in her approach. I have a memory with her on my personal front. She is fit as fiddle. I remember we had traveled to Cherrapunji on a Flo retreat and visited the underground caves there. The cave system was very damp, watery, and narrow with stalactites and stalagmites. We had to literally crawl on our fours to get to the other side. By the time I could even get my wits together, Monica had crawled across and waving to me to get a move on. Needless to say, I was stuck there for a long time. It was then I realized not only her fitness levels, but also the fact that she is younger to me by years. Her emotional and mental maturity never made me realize that earlier. So, Monica and Rekha, welcome once again to Game Changers 2, and hope you will allow us to get more than a peek into your private worlds. Let's start with a quick rapid fire with both of you so that our audience understands your EQ on the go. Monica, we will go with you first. Okay. What is the one thing you would not put on your resume?
My brilliant Telugu speaking skills.
Okay. What would someone who doesn't like you say about you?
That I speak my mind.
Oh. Which is the one biography or story that changed your life and how?
I can name a book, You Can Heal Your Life by Louis Hay. It has brought an awareness.
Oh, okay, good. Apart from your phone, the one thing you won't leave home without?
These days, it's the mask. Otherwise, it's my bottle of lemon water.
Oh, okay. What's on your bucket list that you haven't still ticked off?
Skydiving.
Oh. What annoys you most?
My kids' unkempt rooms. Hope they're not listening.
Okay. Where would you go if you become invisible for a day and why?
I would go and sleep in a hammock.
Okay. Why?
So that nobody can find me there.
Okay. If you had to be evacuated to another planet, what is that one thing you would carry with you?
My bicycle. I love cycling and I can explore the planet.
Oh. Which flavor of ice cream would describe you best?
Cassata. Different layers and lots of colors.
Okay. If a song were to be your motto, which would it be and why?
It's an easy one. Love you, Zindagi.
Okay. That was a really spirited encounter, Monica. Wonderful. Now I'm moving to Rekha.
Hi, Usha.
Hi, Rekha. Rekha, what is the one thing you would not put on your resume?
That I am a hard taskmaster.
What would someone who doesn't like you say about you?
I speak my mind. As Monica said, it's almost the same answer. Very straightforward. We can't help it.
Which is the one biography or story that changed your life? How?
See, Hrithik Roshan's struggle and his success thereafter, what he was as a lean, thin, a young adult and what he is now, uh, with his two right thumb, speech disabilities and what he is now, it's something remarkable. I've read about him in his book and it's superb.
That's great. Yeah. Apart from your phone, the one thing you won't leave home without.
Earphones.
Yes.
I love to hear music.
Oh. What's on your bucket list that you haven't still ticked off?
Actually, we'd cancelled that trip to Italy a lot of times, so I think that is there.
Okay. What annoys you most?
Loud voice.
Is it loud now? Oh my God.
It's perfect. Somebody talking loudly is, I mean.
Where would you go if you became invisible for a day? Wow.
If I would be Mr. India, I would have gone back to my childhood days where there was no responsibility, no accountability, just riding bicycle, climbing trees, picking up flowers, so lovely.
If you had to be evacuated to another planet, what is that one thing you would carry with you?
Memories of my loved ones.
Which flavor of ice cream would describe you the best?
I think strawberry.
Yeah, if a song were to be your motto, which would it be and why?
I think रुक जाना नहीं तू कहीं हार के. That's what.
Okay. That's a sparkling Rekha. Congratulations to both of you for your splendid performance. Rapid fire is not the easiest, I know. And now let's start our main session with Monica Agarwal. Monica, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So, Monica, let's start with something most of us don't know about you. Last year, you were on the Everest Base Camp trek. Tell us about it. What prompted you to do the trek? And what kind of mental and physical preparation did it take? Have you always been an adventurous person?
I've always loved nature, and usually my vacations are also to remote, naturally beautiful places. And I enjoy adventure activities. But before taking up the EBC trek, my idea of a workout was a 45-minute leisure walk. I had never done strength training before, so I was far from fit for taking up a rigorous trek. I went for this trek with two of my cousin sisters, both younger and fitter. One of them does triathlons. So when they called me up and said, let's do this trek, Zindagi na milegi dobara. I thought, let me do this trek before I turn 50, and I registered.
Oh.
And then I started working out. A few days later, I checked with the guide and asked him what is the fitness level that I should have. And he said that I should be able to climb 25 floors without panting or gasping for breath with 10 kgs weight. Now that is when reality stuck in. I was cursing myself and my cousins for pulling me into this. But I've always been a go-getter. And so I was not the kind to give up. I started working out for 1 to 2 hours a day. And after a couple of months, I was climbing 50 floors at a stretch and thought I was fit to go. On the first day of the trek itself, I realized how ill-prepared I was. When I saw the huge mountains and the path in front of me, it was raining and the path was quite slippery. My immediate thought was, I can't do this. Then I asked myself if I could take one step and then the next and so on. I started living in the moment. I became thankful for each muscle of my body, half of which I didn't know existed before. After 4,000 meters height, the air becomes very thin. Even breathing becomes difficult. And at that time, it became one breath at a time, one step, one breath at a time. It truly became meditation. On my return, when I looked back at the mountains, which I had climbed, it felt like a dream. How did I climb all this way up? It felt unbelievable, but exhilarating.
Okay. That's quite courageous, Monica. Yeah, and even I did Manasarovar trek a couple of years ago, and I know the kind of stamina and focus one needs to turn back when the going gets tough. And I'm sure Everest Base Camp trek must be more challenging. Yeah. Can you share some unforgettable experiences of the trek and maybe life lessons that you learned from those few weeks?
EBC has been a life-changing experience for me, and the learnings which happened on this trek have remained with me, and they constantly drive me today. It was a 12-day trek, and we were walking almost 10 to 12 hours every day. Most of the way was narrow, with mountains on one side and valley on the other side, barely 2 feet wide, and sometimes we had to balance our feet on the rocks. On day one, I would walk near the mountains for fear of falling in the valley. So if Sherpas and yaks or mules carrying load would come, I would stop at a safe spot near the mountainside. On day three, I would give them the better path of the road. The fear had disappeared and compassion had taken its place. Similarly, on day one, I would keep on asking the guide as to how much longer the route was, how much steeper. On day three, I didn't ask. I just surrendered. And I was grateful that the guide was even there. The guides have an amazing system. The junior guide leads the group, followed by the trekkers, and the senior guide comes the last. The idea being that the speed of the trek is determined by the slowest trekker. The junior guide could barely speak, and in the beginning, I used to be in the front, and I had lots of questions about the trek, about the mountains, and this guy could hardly reply to any of them. And I wondered why he was in the front. Shouldn't the one leading the group be the best? On day four, I was very sick and I could barely walk. Obviously, I was the last in the line, followed by the senior guy. I wanted to leave the trek, go back to the comfort of the home. He motivated me into continuing the trek. Carrying my backpack, holding my hand at each difficult step, offering water and chocolates, and telling me stories about the mountains. And then I wondered, if I was that kind of a leader at work, motivating and helping my staff when they were. Was I a caring parent, and would my kids come to me, not at their peak state, but when they were their best? Another learning was, I'm alone in this journey. The guide was there to help me, motivate me, but nobody could take the steps for me. I had to walk my path. Others could help me, motivate me, but it was for me to walk. Initially, I had thought that the 12-day of trek would become boring, same mountains, same route every day. But it was amazing how each day felt so different. Each day taught me a new lesson. Each day had something new to soak in. I was working on different muscles every day, different mind situations. And I realized mental fitness plays a bigger role than physical fitness.
Yeah. I mean, the solitude and nature both have their own healing benefits. You're, you're muted? No, we are not able to hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay. And of course, when they are done together, the results are truly amazing. And even the science also proved that And I know once is not enough for you. You may be planning the next trip already.
Absolutely. I've been waiting for this situation to improve. We had planned a trek in February, but then obviously that couldn't happen. And we're just waiting, all three of us, we're
Okay.
just waiting to go back again to the nature and the mountains.
I know, I can understand. I mean, you are becoming very emotional. How, the impact of that trek on you. Yeah. Okay. And my next question is, take us down memory lane, Monica. Where are you from, and what were your dreams and aspirations while growing up? And yeah.
I had a very conservative upbringing. My dad was a High Court judge. He was in the Supreme Court at Delhi also for a few years. He was a very hardworking person who had built his career with his perseverance. So he's always been a role model for me. My mom is a very simple lady. I was a good student and would study all the time. So my parents always told me not to study so much as I would be married at 18 and would have to look after the house. That made me a rebel. And I would work doubly hard to excel at studies and extracurricular activities at school. Since I was good at studies, my teachers and my friends assumed that I would become an IAS officer. But I was very clear by the time I was 15 years old. I wanted to do my own business because I wanted to be on my own. I wanted to be independent. Procedures, rules, paperwork was not for me. Since I didn't have a clue on how to do business, I thought doing an MBA was the first step, and I started working hard.
So then you went on to do your MBA. Where did you do your MBA? And tell us briefly about that experience.
Yeah. So in my MBA, I was the youngest and the most inexperienced kid of the batch.
Okay.
Everyone else had 2, 5, or 10 years experience. I had been selected because of my marks in the entrance and my gold medal in the BSc. But since the course was application based, I was a disaster in class. Initially, I was overwhelmed and overawed. But then soon I realized there was so much to learn from all my batchmates. Each one of them knew something which I didn't, and I was ready to listen, understand, and absorb.
The kind of, clarity you seem to have since your childhood is quite rare, I must say. And also your parents allowed you to follow your heart is quite commendable.
Yeah, I think they hadn't allowed willingly, but as I said, I was always a rebel. So kind of they had to agree to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you straight away start your own business, or did you start off a job, and when did marriage come into the picture?
I met Jitendra while doing my internship at Aisha Motors. We both had similar dreams, same value systems in life. So we got married in a couple of years. And after my marriage, I started working as an investment banker with Kotak Mahindra. I worked there for about 5 years. Though I was earning very well, getting my incentives, promotions, foreign vacations, and so on, but it wasn't fulfilling. I wanted to be on my own, do things my way, achieve the results, have my own business. By then, my daughter was born, and the high flying job left me with hardly any time to spend with her. One day, when I came back home from work, she was about a year old at that time, and she wouldn't leave the nanny and come to me. That day, I sent in my resignation. It was time for me to set my priorities right. We moved back to Hyderabad, and in a couple of months, we opened our first retail furnishings store.
Oh, that's a huge leap of faith. But then whatever may have spurred the decision of your resignation, it was the first step in the direction of your dream becoming an entrepreneur. Sometimes all it takes is one just small nudge.
But I had nurtured this dream from years. So it was easy for me to have that conviction to take that leap of faith when I had.
So what was the reason behind entering the furnishing segment? And did you face any challenges both on your personal front and professional?
Both me and my husband wanted to start our own business, but we didn't have the capital to start manufacturing. So we thought trading was the next best option. In Hyderabad, my mother-in-law was running a small retail showroom since long, and she had a good, loyal customer base. So that was a definite strength. And in Delhi, while doing up our house, we had seen Jagdish stores and a few other big furnishing showrooms. Hyderabad in 1999 did not have any big furnishing store. Hence, we thought that was a good opportunity. There would be a good market for soft furnishings, and we could cater to it. So we opened our first furnishing showroom. A few years later, we opened the second furnishings showroom. Thereafter, we moved into all India distribution. Today, we have over 700 dealers spread all over India. Challenges, yes, work-life balance and setting my priorities was always a challenge. When the kids were young and growing up, if they were home and I was at work, I would feel guilty and myself. Whenever I was faced with a dilemma, I always asked myself, what is most important to me in the long run? And then I made my choice. I think that made the process easier.
I must congratulate you, Monica, on making Jai Durga a pan-India brand in 20 years.
Thank you.
Yeah. And for most Hyderabadis, it is the preferred destination for tasteful furnishings.
Thank you so much.
I know you look after finance and you have undertaken construction of your projects. Normally, these are male-dominated areas. And did you ever feel discriminated against?
Yes, there were times when people, be it the income tax officials, sales tax officials, or construction suppliers, they would walk in my office and ask if they could talk to sir. Now, but once I started speaking and they understood I had subject knowledge, acceptance came in quickly. So I believe it's not the gender, but a person's capability, work, and passion which brings in success.
Yeah. Yeah, this is actually a very valuable point, and I completely agree with you about expertise and experience putting any doubts to rest. And very unfortunately, gender bias and glass ceilings continue to hold back women from achieving their true potential.
I think it's more in the mind.
Yeah. And I and most everybody here knows you through Flow. So tell us about your journey with Flow. Let's start with who or what made you to join this organization.
I used to go to a gym where I met Miss Hina Srivastav, the then current chair.
Okay.
She asked me to join Flow, and I thought it was a good idea to meet other entrepreneurs and businesswomen. So I joined Flow in 2004. I always felt listening to pioneers in the field helped me in aiming for higher goals, understand how to plan to achieve those goals. And today, when I look back, there was a take back in each and every program that I have attended. Something which I have learned either from the speaker or the moderator, committee member, or a flow member.
Yeah. Which was the first post you held in the executive committee?
I always wanted to learn and understand different aspects of life from my seniors. So when an opportunity came up, Ms. Hina Srivastav again asked me to join as a treasurer. I agreed. Finance was anyway my comfort zone, so it was easy. Being on the committee made me learn a lot of things. At that time, Ms. Sarita Reddy was the chairperson, and there was a lot I learned from her, especially her humbleness and her down-to-earth demeanor.
Yeah, that's nice to see memories, Monica. Good. And then you went on to be the secretary and then chairperson. Can you, I mean, how it happened?
I wasn't keen on becoming the secretary, as I thought that was out of my comfort zone. However, Ms. Pinky Reddy, who was the chairperson at that time, somehow convinced me into taking it up.
Okay.
And I feel that was a turning point for me. There was so much to learn and understand. Planning for programs, coordinating with speakers brought in a lot of confidence and maturity. I made some great friends for life. I'm sharing this platform today with two of them, Usha and Rekha. Again, I was quite skeptical, but about taking up the chairpersonship. But then a couple of friends, Maurya Bodha, Mansi Malik, Priyanka Ganeriwal, convinced me into taking this up. This leadership role gave me a lot of self-confidence and built courage in me to dream bigger and plan to execute those dreams. Initially, I thought talking to speakers and convincing them to come for programs would be a Herculean task. I'm sure you're going through it today, Usha. But then one speaker at a time, one call, one email, and the process set rolling.
That's quite a journey. You're very active now. You're very active in the Past Chase Council too. And how has the quality of your contribution changed over the years?
Yes, I was a finance mentor and then a convener in the Past Chase Council. Being a finance mentor was my comfort zone. So I helped in bringing in processes and systems. In being a mentor, we start giving back to the organization, motivating and preparing the future leaders. Being a convener, again, brought in a lot of maturity, a lot of objectiveness, understanding, and focus on the larger picture. Coordination with the other chairpersons, each of them leaders in their own field, but working together as a team for the larger objectives of the organization, brought in humility.
Yeah, we have seen you grow over the years into metamorphose into a butterfly, so to say. Tell us about the transformative journey and what you think have been the most important reasons for your success.
A lot of hard work, proper planning and organizing, a constant urge to learn and improve, and of course, God's grace. Being a part of Flow, where I had the privilege of interacting with inspiring women who had achieved a lot in life, gave me the confidence to dream bigger, take risks, and connect with people from different walks of life. Apart from Flow, both my kids have always kept me on my toes, prodding me to do better, be better. I always wanted to do the best for them, understand them, motivate them, make them better human beings. This made me read books on self improvement, motivation, parenting. I'm a part of book reading sessions by Miss Lakshmi Yarlagadda, who has inspired me into a continuous process of introspection and meditation. For years, I had not been regular with my meditation and even exercise. But EBC brought in that discipline. Today, exercise and meditation are a part of my daily life.
Oh. Finally, what's the one message you would like to give to our members?
Keep growing and learning. Become a better version of yourself every day. Whatever it is that you are doing today, whether a leader, an entrepreneur, a homemaker, a parent, a friend, be better than you were yesterday. And you would always feel on top of the world.
Thank you, Monica, for giving us a glimpse into your life and what makes you to the go-to person for family, friends, and colleagues.
I would like to thank you and Team Flow for giving me this opportunity. I feel really privileged and honored to share my heart.
It's a pleasure for us, Monica, to know about you. And actually, your perseverance and diligence are accompanied by a willingness to help and the generosity to see others grow. And this is your best attribute. And of course, I'm a living example for that. I know how many hours I spoke to you, and
it's been a privilege for me as well to see you really shine so much this year.
Thank you. Thanks again. Thanks, Monica. Now I'll move on to Rekha. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Rekha?
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, hi. First of all,
Monica was so inspirational, I must say. Superb.
Thank you,
So
Rekha.
much to learn.
yes, a lot. And she's very, a lot of discipline we need to learn from her in the systems.
Absolutely.
Rekha, I want to start your session now. And first of all, thanks for joining us here.
My pleasure. In fact, I want to thank everyone here, all friends who joining us today. It's been, it's really, it means a lot to me.
And I want to share one thing with you, Rekha. Now, I was supposed to be the treasurer for you too, but I had to take the tough decision of dropping out due to some pressing reasons for my personal reasons, and that too at the nth moment. And it would have been so difficult for you to find a replacement so quickly, but nevertheless, you did it with a smile and never reproached me for it. I felt so bad about what I did that I was very awkward facing you the next time. But your attitude towards me stayed unfailingly positive and normal. And I really admire you for your innate grace and deep maturity.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much.
Unknowingly, you taught me two life lessons that day. That one is no one is indispensable, and second one is of grace under fire. Okay. And I feel so proud and privileged to be talking to you, Rekha, on this platform today.
My pleasure.
Can you take us on your true north journey?
Sure.
You started out as a fashion designer when you were barely out of your teens. And how was that experience? What lessons did you learn from starting out so early in life?
See, I can say, Usha, that my work life started actually very early. I was 19 when I got married. I started as a fashion designer and I was rather successful. Even got the opportunity to design for beauty pageants and shows. And I ran a successful boutique since till 2002. I had young children and my priority was to raise them well. Uh, what hit me, I involved my mother-in-law into my business in the boutique. And because by that time I had started manufacturing, made it a little large. So there was someone should be able to handle that. And she got involved in the business and she started enjoying it as well. So there was peace and harmony at home. And I think that ploy worked. Yeah.
So I agree with you. Even I started working on my own insistence at the age of 18. And the life lessons of working has taught me and helped me to take responsibility of my own life and grow into a strong woman. I can see the same in you. Art is still not a mainstream business or career option in India. So, how did art and art business happen for you? Did you have to learn from scratch, or were you exposed to it at some level in school or at home?
Well, I was always inclined towards fine arts. I grew up in Kolkata, and the city's rich art and cultural heritage had always shaped my youth and childhood. I longed to get involved in the world of art and to pursue a career in fine arts. I really wanted to spread my wings. And thankfully, my husband, Prashant, was an avid art collector. And he also wanted to make a name in this business. So he helped me understand the potential of the art market, the sustainability quotient, the opportunity, and how to create a future legacy for generations. So these things helped me in the journey.
Yeah, I know. I mean, art has always mirrored the society, and socially relevant art has the power to make a meaningful impact on how we think and act. Of course, the education system and government should provide more opportunities to learn art from a young age itself. I think it will help our children blossom into more complete human beings.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's good that you had the opportunity, Rika, and see where are you because of your early introduction of, I mean, to art.
Yeah. As I always say, art is a lie which I always say art is a kind of lie which takes me from the real to the surreal.
That's great. Tell us about more about Kalakriti and what is the vision and its growth story.
So, our story begins with the umbrella organization Kalakriti India, which has been on a mission to preserve and promote art of Indian origin or art that features India as a subject. So, Kalakriti and its SPV companies has their independent, kind of companies are there, but the focus is art and making it more accessible to everyone. By access, we mean art available, affordable, within reach, and without losing its power to communicate. We have two fine art galleries, the Parent Gallery featuring the best of Indian art. Kalakriti Contemporary was born out of the need for emerging artists to showcase. An archive section of rare photographs and antique maps, which is a treasure trove for research scholars, students, and our curious-minded friends. An alfresco dining is a fun and friendly art environment, also functions as a space to promote not only fine arts but performing arts. Kalakriti India also runs an art residency, which conducts an annual art and culture festival, provides e-commerce opportunity to artists, and their holistic welfare. So, and we also have an art-based premium lifestyle products manufacturing facility. So, this is how it's all divided.
Oh. And congratulations to you and Prashant and your kids too.
Thank you.
Because with Kalakriti, you rewrote the art scene in Hyderabad and put the city in the world map of art. You made sure that the gallery became a conceptual space for everyone. And it is commonly felt that art is elitist, but with your constant efforts, you made sure that we overcame that apprehension and felt welcome in your creative space. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. And what do you think of the Indian ecosystem for art? Is there an organized platform for artists, art dealers, galleries, exhibition organizers, art exhibitions, and students to converge?
So I would say yes and no. The reason is that artists who are well nurtured, handhold, can go places. Otherwise, what happens that there are many artists, but so this is the reason why I would like to relate Bapi Das story. Bapi Das is the name of an artist who does embroidery, and so I would like to share that personal story of his for you all to understand how an artist can be so famous and the whole process. So the Bapi Das was an auto rickshaw driver, self-trained artist from the roads of Kolkata, and which we took to the Kochi Biennale 2018 and has been a source of pride and inspiration for all of us. So Bapi was always very fond of art, and his art was doing embroidery. So this is Bapi Das. If you see, he's doing embroidery, and that is the art which he does. So his embroidery is from the nylon threads. So Bapi, his mother was, the father left them, and the mother used to do domestic household chores. He started plying auto rickshaw in the daytime, and in the night time he used to do this embroidery. But by a chance encounter, we saw his works. If you see these works, it is his journey as an auto rickshaw driver, from an auto rickshaw to the roads of Kolkata, and he was born in the Hooghly River. So just see the vision of how he's created the art form. And then we showcased his work in the gallery first during the festival, and then Kochi Biennale, he was then showcased there. And today his works are in the Rene Museum in Vancouver. And I have a list of at least 50 people who want Baki Das's work.
Wow. Great.
So this is, and I have a lot of stories like this. So because we have a team who hunts the talent. So there's another person called Vijay Biswal, who's a ticket collector in Indian Railways. He does fabulous watercolors. Another is Moshe Dayan. So, these stories is what takes you forward. And when you see them reach their, actual place, you feel really good, satisfied.
Yeah. That's, I mean, it's great to know about them and about your encouragement. And actually, in a recent, somewhere I read that artist tops the list of non-essential jobs. And in education also, it is still not mainstreamed. So as long as governments and the public at large do not understand that art and artists are very important to preserving and relating the story of our times, art will lag behind and will not become a part of larger discourse. Yeah, in fact, just the day before, I read that only an NREGA for our traditional artists can help them survive this pandemic. Hope things quickly change.
I know.
And we know you are regular at the India Art Fair. And how do you compare Indian artistic sensibilities with what's happening internationally?
See, Indian artistic sensibilities is evolving, sometimes at par, sometimes a notch below, but depends. When we began our journey 18 years back, we made our motto to embrace art, explore art in all its avatars, and not getting caught up in the parameter of commercial, what sells and what not sells, because that's what the problem starts. Kalakriti Art Gallery regularly organizes workshops, panel discussions, film screening centered around art. So the gallery has in the past ventured into collaborative programs with Allianz, Goethe Zentrum, University of Hyderabad, National Art Fairs, India Art Fair Expo, the Agora Festival in France. In fact, Bordeaux, which is in the south of France, and Hyderabad is the sister city as far as art and culture is concerned. And we handle that part, with artist exchange and culture exchange. So we had our exhibition in there and they have their exhibitions over here. So that's a very good involvement other than the commercial part.
Yeah.
So what I meant to say is that it's very important to get involved in art, just not the buying, selling, but holistically.
Okay. Yeah, that's so encouraging, Rekha. Somehow the perception is that our traditional art is good, but our contemporary interpretations are still far behind global sensibilities. I'm glad to hear things that are changing.
Yeah.
And investing in art is an expensive affair. So, despite having a genuine interest, the price point becomes a decision for many. At the same time, one is not sure whether affordable art is a good investment. And what are your thoughts on this?
So we always believe that art is for everyone. That has been our motto from the day one. And we have been consciously working to make sure that we have something for everyone, from the learned connoisseur to someone who wants to buy a beautiful painting for his or her living room. While promoting every type of art and artist, keeping the needs and the interest of the audience, we have pushed us to explore and look beyond the well-knowns and the famous. In this journey, we have been blessed with working with various talented and experimental artists. So we have chosen ourselves to untag ourselves as a commercial gallery, but make artist a priority. So if an artist show is happening in whichever gallery I have, if suppose the artist comes and says, I want to paint this wall red and this wall black and this wall white, I would say just go ahead. Because it's that person's sensibility, how he wants to project and present his art form. So we've always worked like that. Also, the Love Hyderabad typographical structure, which it was done by us. It was made by us to the city of Hyderabad. The street art which you see in Necklace Road, the Makta Art District, that was done by us. The Kala Mela, which we used to do which is open to all amateur artists, it was our thought process. The whole thing is that, the more you reach the masses, we've always thought like we should take art to public and public to art. If we think public will come to art rather than taking art to public, it should not happen. So that's a process, two-way process we always believed in.
Yeah, I mean, artists like Modigliani and Van Gogh struggled to survive during their lifetime. But today their art is out of reach for most everyone. I do see your point that unless encouraged through buying, no artist will make a name for himself or herself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And we'll move to the Gallery Cafe is a unique concept.
Yeah.
How did you think of it? And what is its goal?
See, let me tell you very clearly, Gallery Cafe is not my concept. It is my daughter's concept. She came after doing her master's in art, and she wanted to start something else. And then she came up with the idea, why don't we marry al fresco dining with exhibiting art? And that's how this came into being. And so the space has been extensively designed and made for launchpad for artists, authors, talks, seminars by various personalities, and also give them chance to perform, because every Wednesday there's a musical event. So this whole concept was her concept. I don't want to take away anything from her.
That's so wonderful, Megha. And also giving a platform for young and local talent to shine is amazing. I have also visited the cafe a couple of times and found the atmosphere to be very charged and serene at the same time.
Thank you. See, the art fraternity to go and survive, we need to have a very synergy between, buyers, collectors, gallerists, and promoters. So we like to promote artists who've got the talent, and we give scholarships also. We're doing it for many, many years now. So
that's great. Let's move on to your role in Flow now. And what has been your journey with the organization like? And what did you learn from your stint as the chairperson? And what would be your advice to the future chairs?
So my journey in Flow started in 2003 as Monica. And I was the secretary with, earlier it was Suchitra LA, and then Lata Reddy. And I was really young that time. But yeah, Flow has been always a good, enriching experience. So it's been a learning journey throughout, making friends for life, delegation of work, finding talent, planning well. And whenever you're at crossroads, let your conscience decide which paths to take. And then I like to follow my heart. So, finally it's all an honorary post, and it's all about teamwork. One person can't do anything. So I'm thinking differently, out of the box, understanding and interacting with members. This has been my journey all. And what about Flow advice I can give is, I don't think so I can give any advice, but never let success go into your head. Be as humble as possible. And you are just as any other member. You're no special. You're just like any other member. You should always think like that.
That's really good. I think one should remember that. Yeah. And I heard that you are currently heading YPO. And how is it different from Flow?
See, in YPO, there's no hierarchy. All officers post are members first. And we are given the freedom. We have an international body, chapter, region, and training is given to every officer. So whether your term is for 2 years or 1 year, even if it is for 2 years, you'll be giving the training the next year. Because YPO adaptability is very important. They keep evolving and they keep updating. So you have to be in tune with everything what is changing and know how to adapt well in your chapter, in the region, and then support the international as well.
Oh. Yeah, even I heard how YPO opens up the avenues for networking across the globe. And we are so proud to see you at the helm of YPO South Asia.
Thank you. But I would just say, like to share that Flow has taught me a lot of things. It's been climbing up. It's a stepping stone towards YPO, because unless you are trained, I think it's all a process of experience, training, which takes you long.
Yeah.
And also my fellow here, Monica, has been absolutely amazing. As you said, Usha, we've had umpteen number of chats, umpteen number of discussions. But anything I used to call her up. And so that's what, when she said straightforward, that's the way even I am. So I guess it works well.
Yeah. And we know philanthropy is big on your agenda. And what are the various ways in which you are giving back to the society?
So philanthropy is the joy of giving from heart for the society from where we've taken so much. We need to be thankful and we need to give back in whichever way we can. It may be a drop in the ocean, but everything helps. We need to find our own ways. And our philanthropy arm, established in 2004, Krishna Kirti Foundation, has been promoting art and culture while actively giving support to those artists who have dared to break out from their mold to their vision and determination. Every year, the foundation conducts the annual Art and Culture Festival in Hyderabad, celebrating art, culture, and education. Also, we've started the Franco India Education Trust with Krishna Kirti Foundation, in association with the Embassy of France in India, has been providing fellowships to deserving candidates to study fine arts in the art capital of world, Paris. And the foundation also supports merit-based sponsorship for art students. So, yeah.
That's a lot of giving back that you are doing, Rekha.
Thank you.
The art sector does require doers and visionaries like you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful to see all the work that you are putting into making India a destination for global art investment.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. Okay, it comes to end. Thank you, ladies, for that marvelous interaction. Your innovative choices and determined pursuit of your goals have left us with many points to ponder upon. Now, thank you so much, and I'll hand over the session to Priya now for the question and answers with our audience. Priya, unmute yourself.
Thank you, Usha. And I think I was just catching my breath, so I forgot to unmute also. What a revelation it has been this whole afternoon, And one thing I understood was that these are two very different journeys, two very different perspectives, but they're both converging at one point, which is empowerment begins and happens from within. I think these two ladies have demonstrated that amply, and it's a major lesson for all of us to learn. Without wasting any more time, I'm moving on to our Q&A segment. And we have some very interesting questions here. One is from Gunjan Sindhi, and she's asking Monica, when earning is no longer a necessity, how would you reschedule your time? What would your day look like?
Earning has never been a necessity. I think after the first couple of years when I started working, I think after that, and especially with the business, it's always been the passion to become better, do better, whatever the dreams are there, to fulfill them. I think today it's my dreams which propel me forward. So yeah, that's that. It's like, going and working at office is like taking a breath. So I can't be away from my office and my work.
Thank you. Thank you,
So
Monica.
I think my day is still going to look like have meditation, exercise, and then work. And then, yes, I love spending time with my kids.
That's quite packed, I must say. And Sarika is asking Sarika Burbu, if you could accomplish one thing by the end of 2021, very kindly left out 2020, what would make the biggest impact on your happiness?
If I can achieve one thing.
Yeah, by end 2021. So
it's a huge time.
Yeah.
I think, in today's day and age, if I'm able to support my team, with ample amount of, work and freedom, and get into the, system of e-commerce in a particular way, which I think of, it'll be great, because that is one sector which I have not ventured into much. I've just entered into during these COVID times, learned about it, but that is the area I want to really excel in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the need of the hour, and thanks to COVID, everybody is now jumped onto the bandwagon. So we better be, prepared or we become dinosaurs. Thank you so much. And Vandana Shetty is asking Monica, let's say you were gifted a live redo button this Diwali. Would you feel tempted to use it? If yes, what would you change?
Absolutely. I think I would like to go back to pre-COVID days. There are no two ways about it. I think it is more for the amount of fear which I see in people today, the compassion which has gone out of people's lives. That is something which really troubles me, and I think that's the reason why.
Thank you, Bhumika. And I have one last question for Rekha, unless somebody else leaves anything in the chat box. Otherwise, I'm tempted to ask mine. Ladies, any other questions? Anybody else putting up your hand? Okay, till such time, I wanted to ask, you are an artist yourself and you promote artists and you're surrounded by art 24 hours a day. So I was just thinking, somebody said that you have to, when you retain your childlike curiosity, and that is very essential to remain an artist. So what did you do, let's say, when you were 10 years old, which you have done again in the recent times? Or what is that you've not done and you want to do from when you were 10 years old?
See, I've been learning art since the age of 7, 8. And after getting into contemporary art, retailing of contemporary art, obviously your art goes back. You're mentoring, you're seeing artists, and so I would like to get back into it whenever, but I don't know when.
But you do your riyaz regularly. How has, staying at home through COVID, has it upped the number of hours you spend on your riyaz?
it hasn't much, but I try to do my riyaz on Sundays. So I keep my surpeti in place. I like to do it as far as possible.
That's so wonderful, really keeping in touch with what really makes you happy. Yes. And thank you so much, ladies. With that, I invite Uma Chikurpati, Senior Vice Chairperson, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Well, good evening. What a wonderful session. We listened to two beautiful, strong, independent, and accomplished ladies' speeches today. You know, we are so fortunate to listen to their experiences and all. And, their paths may be different, their ambitions may be different, but they both are successful and, achieved what they aimed for. Fantastic. It is always wonderful to know the experiences, stories, and life journeys of people and learn from them. Many aspects like challenges they faced, decisions they had taken at some crucial times, the determination, some compromises, courageous and boldness in certain situations, their dreams, and which path they chose to realize their dreams. Everything is like, we can learn a lot. Unless we keep learning, I think our life comes to a standstill. Monica, thank you so much for sharing your, life experiences with us. You have a goal right from your childhood, and in between, maybe little bit of deviation, but still, of course, you have done what you wanted, and at the right time, you had taken the decision. Okay, forget about it. Let me, that is fantastic. And definitely we will remember that, keep moving and keep learning. Yes, I think throughout the life, one has to do that, isn't it? And also, I can totally identify the adrenaline rush when you reach the base camp,
Absolutely, you've done that, so I'm sure.
So that is fantastic, and we remember. And at the same time, Rekha, you started with fashion designing, and later on, changed the field totally. And your passion for love, you made it into a career. Very unusual, and it is fantastic. And definitely, we remember whatever you achieve, be humble. Definitely, that is very much one has to remember, and very important in anybody's life. And giving back to the society, I think it is a responsibility of each and every person in their own way. Whatever you can give, you have to give back to the society. And that's a beautiful, take home from what you said. Thank you so much, beautiful ladies, inside and out. And you both held the flow flag high during your tenures. And thank you so much once again. So I thank you all our sponsors, Polymer Group and RBC, the branding partner, and also Pushpam Publications, the gifting partners, for their generosity. And I thank all the past chairs and all the members of Flow, Pan India, and all the viewers for joining us today, and the hardworking team, and the technical team for all the support. And I think finally, what we have to say from these two ladies, what is that, take back? Be humble wherever you go, whatever you achieve. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful festive season. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Uma. Thanks, Usha. Thanks, Team Flow, Hyderabad. Thank you. And thanks, Monica.
Thanks, Rita.
Partner in crime, always.
Thank you, Monica and Rekha. What a, wonderful evening today.
Absolutely, our pleasure.
Yeah.
It was so lovely working with you ladies. Always there for the dry run whenever.
Priya, you are amazing. Absolutely, to the core, all work done, precise. Thanks so much.
And can we have our closing slides now, IT team?